joining. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Meredith, and I've been crocheting for over 50 years. For 50 years. Not over 50 years, probably exactly 50 years. And I jump on in the mornings to do lives. It is 9:45 a.m. Eastern United States time. And my tutorials are based upon the principle that if you can hold a hook and you can hold a yarn, you can yarn over and pull through your loop, then you can crochet just about anything. It's all about sequencing those stitches and those movements. So in the past we've done some different things. One of the things that we've done is the shrug that you see in the back. Maybe see in the back. That's the shrug that we did. And I just kind of have it draped over like a scarf. That was one of the tutorials that we did. And last week we did a different stitch each day. And one of the stitches that we did was the cat stitch. And the cat stitch was, and again, I will be totally unprepared. This is just kind of like real life how it is here with me. The cat stitch, here it is, the swatch that we did, is basically a bunch of stitches put together to look like cats. Good morning, everybody that's joining. Good morning, Samantha and Cindy. Good morning, everybody. I'm so sorry. I was so self-absorbed in that goofy yarn yesterday that I wasn't very chatty. But I got it done. And I started another one. And after the second one, the yarn's getting a little bit easier. Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate it. The yarn's getting a little bit easier to work with. So tonight when I jump on and I'm a little bit more chatty, hopefully. So this is the cat stitch that we did last week. It was one of the tutorials. And today I'm going to start working on a shrug with that cat stitch. I have to hang my sign up. My husband insists that I try to promote myself. So it's back there if anybody really wants to see it. Just let me know. I will try to do my best to show you and pay attention to the comments while I'm teaching. When I teach in the mornings, I do try to limit the personal chatter just because I will upload this to YouTube so that eventually you can go back and rewatch if you want to rewatch. Oh, thank you so very much. I appreciate it. So you can rewatch the tutorials if you want to rewatch the tutorials. Most of the tutorials I do are all free-handed. So I'm working through the tutorial with you, kind of showing you my thought process and how I would go about creating the free-handed piece that I'm creating. So, I bought new yarn for this project because I was excited to do it. And of course, you know, I thought about doing orange and gray because I have an orange cat and a gray cat, but I went with pink and gray. I thought these would be pretty together. And when I'm done with it, I'll probably throw it on my table. So I wanted something that was maybe a little bit more feminine. I could have done pink and orange, but I thought pink and gray would be a nice contrast. So, cat stitch. So what do we know about the shrug so far? So the shrug so far is basically a big long scarf with the sleeves stitched up at the ends. So, for those of you that watch the tutorial, you already know this. the previous tutorial, but it's basically a scarf with the ends stitched up like sleeves, and I fluted mine, flared mine, and this part fits around your back. It's a little bit tough to get on over top of long sleeves anyway. Not tough, it's just, and it is easier to put it on backwards and throw it over your head. So this would be the back. So it's called a shrug because it just goes over your shoulders like you would shrug your shoulders, and then that's the back, and then you have your sleeves. So it's basically just a set of crocheted sleeves, which I usually wear with tank tops and a skirt. And I have actually been wearing this one. I have kept it for myself because I like it. And of course I had to be a little bit extra, because why not be extra? So I added beads to the end. And I showed you all kinds of ways to do this. And one of the ways that I explained was how you would do this if you had a directional stitch. So this is going to be a good example of how you would make this shrug if you had a directional stitch. A couple of other things about the shrug was the ends, which would be the cuffs. And I am getting to a point. And how to start your shrug depending on your stitch. This one, because it was open and it was mesh, to measure it, we started with the seam down the back. So you really can't even tell. We started directly in the center of the back, and we worked out and down. And when we got to the point where we were just under our arms with the scarf part of it, we started working in rounds so that the colors would flow and there wouldn't be a seam. Working with the directional stitch is a little bit different. This directional stitch is a little bit different because this stitch is worked from the bottom up, and we want it to lay like this. So to do that, if we want to work it in the round up until we get to the scarf point, we have to start with the cuff, if you want a cuff. Or if you just wanted the bottom of your sleeve to look like this, you could just do the bottom of your sleeve like this. I think I want a cuff on mine. And again, this is all free-handed, so this is my whole thought process. Everything I'm thinking is going to come out of my mouth so that you can understand where I'm coming from, so that if you decide you wanted to put one together yourself, you could kind of go through that and see how you would make those adjustments for yourself. So I do know with the cat stitch I need multiples of 5, and I should probably use my 6mm hook since I crochet so tight, and I know it's in this box somewhere with the rest of my yarn and stuff that I was using yesterday. There it is. This is my box of sheepy yarn that I bought for my slugs. Okay, so I know I want to start at the cuffs and work my way up. So the cats are this way on my sleeve. That's the first part of the directional stitch. Now, if this stitch was worked the other way from the top down, then you would want to work from the middle of your back out to the sleeves. But it's not. It's worked from the bottom up. And since the bottom is the end of your sleeve, that's where we're going to start. I also know that I want to put a cuff on it. And I'm going to do a simple cuff. I also know that I have to decide which color I want to start with. So, do I want to make my cuff? I think it would be a little bit fidgety if I tried to make my cuff alternate colors. But you could do that. You could do one row pink, one row gray. I'm using pink and gray as my example. One row pink, one row gray as your whole cuff, and then start with your color preference for your first stripe. Or you can start with the same stitches you're using here to make this part look as part of the cuff, which I kind of think I like that idea. I think I might do that. And I'm thinking maybe I'll start with gray. So my first row, so gray will be my cuffs, and my first total row, complete row of cats, finished cats, will be pink. So I think that's what I'm going to do. So now that I've decided that, ooh, my center pull is right on top. Sometimes you get lucky. All right, see if I can get everything to say. So to make my cuff, there are a couple things that I want to take into consideration. And again, when you like freestyle things like this, it's a good idea to have a notebook with you so that you can jot down notes so that when you do the second side, you know what you did. So notebook, and I keep losing them, so I have a box of pencils. Looks like I'm running low on my box of pencils. Or you can, one of the other ways I like to keep notes is in Google Documents or Google Drive. Google Drive, if you have Google Documents with your Google Drive, you can just go in and open it and list it and just put your notes right on your phone, which is what I do sometimes. Typically, though, I will write down my notes as I'm going, and then once I'm satisfied that I have what I want, then I'll put my notes in my drive. That way I have everything saved. Because if not, I end up with like a million little notebooks. Well, maybe not a million, maybe like 100 little notebooks everywhere, and not kidding. I have a couple boxes of notebooks. Some of them I have no idea what's in them. I'm sure if I started just working something, I would end up with a project that I made years ago. But it's my first rows. Okay, so the question was, by having the cuff the same color as the first rows, would that, good morning, Michelle, would that take away from the look of the cat? I don't think so, because this is my starting chain right here. And if I do my cuff in gray, it would kind of look like the heads were just kind of peeking out. I could actually extend that down to make this first row. I mean, I could do the cuff a different color and then extend my down the first row, or I could just make it simple and just make my cuff in this like the heads were like peeking out of the cuff, and then this would be the first row of cats. So it would make the cuff look almost decorative, because this would look almost like it was like an edge on the top of the cuff, and then this would end up being my first row of cats. So this would all be orange down here with just, and then this would be my first row of cats and my second row of cats. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. So I'm going to start, and I'm going to do, the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to measure how big I want it to be. So to measure how big you want your shrug to be, I know we're starting at the bottom, and I know it drives you guys, some of you guys, crazy that I like do things and rip things out all the time, but sometimes it's like a necessary part of the process. This is one of those times. However, it's going to be very simple and a very quick part. I need to measure how many stitches around I need to make my cats. So I need to have multiples of 5 stitches. And if you remember from the last shrug we did, we measured the fattest part of our arm with our stitches to get where we wanted the circumference of our sleeve to be. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 17, 2, 23, 24, 25. This is just for measurement. 27, 28, 29, 30, 32, 33, 34, 35, 8, 39, 40. And then I'm going to take it and I'm going to measure around my arm to see if, and that is really not big enough. If this is the end of my chain, this is the end of my chain, and this is it. It's still not big enough at 40, so I'm going to try 45. I'll try 50. 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50. Okay, so now I have a chain that if I put it around my arm, it fits a little bit looser. So do I take 5 out? I think I'm going to take 5 out and go with 45. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Again, part of the process. If you want it to be what you want it, you kind of have to take that time to do that. So now I have a chain of 45. And if I put it around the fattest part of my elbow or my arm, and again, keep them on the acrylic, will stretch a little bit. Well, see, that's going to be, if I want to put it on my table, this would be an okay size for me, but I lost some weight, so I think maybe I'm going to go with the 50. Okay, so now that I know I'm going to use 50 stitches for my rounds of cats, I'm going to mark my 50, and I'm going to take out this chain. And I'll show you why I'm going to take out the chain. Because I'm going to make the cuff first. But it has to be those 50 stitches, because if it's not those 50 stitches, by the time you finish it, it's not going to fit up here. So we just needed to know that our starting point for our cats is going to be 50 stitches. My starting point for my chain, though, I think is going to be 20. For my cuff, I think I'm going to go around 25 times. And I'm going to do an easy cuff for 5. And I'm not going to make it very big. I have 8 stitches there. I'm not going to make it very big because this is going to extend the color and make it look like it's part of the cuff. So I don't want the cuff to be too long. Maybe I'll just do 6 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so I have a chain of 6. And I'll hold it up because once we start with the pink, I know I wore gray. I have my chain of 6 stitches, and this is going to be my cuff. And it may seem like that's not going to be enough, but it totally will once you start building off of it. My 6 stitches is going to be my 5 stitches that I'm going to use for my cuff, and my 1 stitch that I'm going to use for my height for my turning chain. And I am going to go into the first chain, and these are single crochets, US standard terms. I'm going to yarn over and pull through my stitch, and yarn over and pull through both loops. That's 1 single crochet, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's, trust the process. Because now, remember, this is going to look like it's part of our cuff. So even though we only did 5 stitches down there as our cuff, it's going to end up giving the illusion that you have 10 stitches because this is going to look like it's part of the cuff. Oh, thank you guys so much. Okay, so now the cuff is the easy part. So I know I want to do exactly half, and exactly half is going to be 25 rows. So I am going to keep tally marks. So I've done 1, and you can go back and count them if you want, but I'm going to use tally marks. I'm going to chain one for my height, and I'm going to turn. So this is the back of my work. So this top loop would be my front loop that I'm looking at, and this right here would be my back loop that I'm looking at. I'm going to then single crochet in all the back loops. So I'm going to go down with my hook into that back loop. I'm going to yarn over and pull through my loop, and yarn over and pull through my stitch. And then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to just through, not this loop, but this loop in the back. So the loop in the back. And that's 2, 3, 4, 5, and then I'm going to chain another one, turn, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to work into the back loops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you can see it will start to look like ribbing after like the next row or so. And then I'm going to chain my one and turn, and again working only in the back loops. Do my 5 single crochets across. 3, 4, 5. So you can kind of see it starting to look like ribbing. So now so far I have 1, 2, 3, 4. I have 4. Again, I'm going to chain one, and I'm going to turn, and I'm going to single crochet in my back loops. Always my back loops for my ribbing. Now you could do this differently. You could start with your 50 and then do front post and back post single double crochets, but I like this cuff a little bit better because it'll look a little bit, it just looks more like a cuff to me, I think. I don't know. So I'm just going to continue working for my 25 rows, making sure my tension doesn't keep getting tighter, because that's my tendency. I am using 6 millimeters. I know it's backwards there. A 6 millimeter hook. Yeah, I like the look of the ribbed cuffs too. I am doing the cuff. The question is, I thought you were doing the cuff. Can't you increase for your upper arm? Depending on what your stitch is, yes, you could increase for your upper arm. However, with this cat stitch is pretty like solid as to like seeing the cats. And I think to do increases for the upper arm might distort the look of some of the cats as you were doing your increases. So that's why we're going to start the way we're going to start. We're going to keep this, the cat pattern, the length we wanted around our arms, so that we don't, so that I don't distort any of the cats. And I'm going to increase. I'm going to do 25 rows of the ribbing, which should be more than adequate to go around my wrist. And that's half of the stitches that we want to go around the top of our arm. So it'll still pull tighter around your wrist, But then when we're done with this, we're going to join it together into a circle, and then we're going to increase in the tops to your, since we have 25 rows and we want 50 stitches to do our cats, we're going to increase in each one of these rows so that we have 2 single crochets in the top of each one of these rows, and then we can start our cats. So we'll have our 50 stitches, and we'll still have our ribbing that brings it together, and we won't have to increase as we go up and distort the cats, if that makes sense. Oh, Cindy, please be honest with me, because sometimes I explain things and I think to myself, did that really come out right? But sometimes you really do just have to trust the process. And I'm just going to keep going up. You do understand. Okay. Now, if I were doing just a basic crochet or a basic single crochet or something like that, then it wouldn't matter if you were increasing as you went up. But a stitch like this that is quite definitive in its look, I'm glad you would let me know if you didn't. A stitch like that that's definitive in its look and its count, you would definitely see the increases, and it would just seem like it would, parts of your rows would end up being distorted, and it wouldn't look right. At least I don't think it would look right. So this is the way that I think it's going to look right. So this is the way that I'm going to try it. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. So I'm about halfway. So that's about right. So I'm about halfway. Other ways that you could do this is you could just start with your cat pattern with your 50 stitches and then crochet your cuff up and down, back, you know, you could crochet your cuff up and back down, up and back down, but they, I did actually, where is it? Oh, I lied. I almost have it finished. I have 3 bags that I have to, just stitch the linings in. The linings are done. So I've got about like maybe 15 minutes worth of work left on each one, and this is one of them that I was planning on finishing today with the pink and purple. So that one I was planning on finishing today. Okay. Oh, you guys make me happy that you guys like my stuff and enjoy. I really do. That's the one she likes. I can send you a message when I post it if you'd like me to. Okay, I'll do that. That was what I was going to work on this evening. Was I have 3 bags sitting there that I have the linings totally done. I just need to take about 15 minutes with each one of them to stitch them in. So that'll be one that I'll probably, that I know I'm going to finish up tonight. I always say probably because I never know what's going to pop up and what I might end up doing instead of what I have planned doing. I'm sure you guys understand that, especially if you've had kids. you just never know where you're going to end up. My husband and I went to Walmart the other day and decided it's been a while, maybe we should actually like buy groceries and things like that and do some actual like real shopping. So we went to Walmart to do some like real shopping, and before we leave, it's always okay, add to the list or send me a text of what you want on the list, and we'll make sure we get it. And so they give us all their list of anything that they might need at Walmart. And that was Saturday. Oh, thank you for all the likes. And then I'm just going to chatter while I finish up my 25 rows for my cuff here. And then yesterday, after we had just been to Walmart, my daughter informs us that she needs, for her concert next weekend, mousse, nylons, eyeliner. I'm like, are you kidding me? So at some point, my husband and I will be making another trip to Walmart. And I actually bought some more pink hair dye. I hate to waste a whole tube of hair dye though on this like hair that's making me crazy because it's long. Keep an eye on your bags. My granddaughter's like looking to see what they like. Oh, thank you so much. I have that one, I have the sparkle one, and I have the other black one that I should be, and then I have the rainbow bag that I should be posting on my site. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Excuse me, I have a couple more rows to go. All right, so now I have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22. 2 more rows to go. And yes, I know I'm stopping at 24 instead of 25. It's because we're going to join with the last round. All right. What is the sparkle? It's black, but all this that you see here is like metallic thread. So it's all the black has like sparkles in it. That's the sparkle one. So I have the black sparkle one, and then I have a plain black and gray one like this. It's hard to see, but that is metallic thread in there. The plain black one and then the pink one are the 3 skull ones I have done. Let's see. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18. Okay, so plain. Okay, yeah. So I have 24 out of my 25 rounds for my cuff. And if I go around my wrist, it will fit and it will stretch. So now my row number 25, I'm actually going to fold this in half so that I can work through the back rows and this row here and the starting chain. So I'm going to work through the back rows and through the starting chain. That's not going to help, I know that. Oh, maybe it will. I'm going to work through the back rows and through the starting chain at the same time. So I'm going to go chain 1 for my height. I'm trying to get the light. So I'm going to chain 1 for my height, and I'm going to go through my back row. I'm going to pick up my cuff, and I'm going to go through a loop on the starting chain, and that's where I'm going to do my actually I'm going to do a slip stitch. I think I'm going to do a slip stitch there. So again, I'm going to go through my back row, my back loop, I'm going to go through my, and then I'm going to pull a slip stitch. And that slip stitch will actually, if you look, this is my slip stitch. Because you're slip stitching through 2 of those rows there, it's going to make it look like some light. It's going to make it look like there's another row there. And it'll just be like the top of the ribbing. So again, I'm going through my back loop, through the next starting chain, and I'm going to pull a slip stitch, my back loop, the starting chain, so I'm joining in a circle, and I'm going to pull that through, and then I have one more in my back loop from my first part of my sleeve and into the starting chain, and I'm just going to pull through another slip stitch. So now I have a cuff that is joined together. And by doing the slip stitch, it made it look like another part of the ribbing. Boy, this is a really, like the sun shifted. Everything was perfect with the sun coming in the window. Let me see if I open the door. So we're all looking to see what you put on your store. Thank you and have a good day. Oh no, you can keep asking. I just feel bad I might not always be paying attention. I try to pay attention in the evenings and be much more chatty. Sometimes it happens, and sometimes I get so self-absorbed in things like new yarn that's difficult to work with that I wasn't as chatty yesterday as I usually am, and I felt really bad. Let me open my door, maybe see the sunlight, because I've been getting used to the sunlight. It seems to make things look a little bit better. Hopefully that looks a little bit brighter. A little bit brighter. But we are going to switch to pink eventually. So now, after we've gotten our cuff, and yes, I know it looks small, but it is going to increase to like normal cuff size. Just want to see the plain black one. It just has the plain matte black instead of the sparkle black. So that was the plain one. Oh, Sir Charles, I am prepared for you. Oh wait, no, I thought I was prepared for you. I already gave you your bone. Where's my brain? You got up this morning while... You're welcome. Yeah, I really don't mind. I don't care. When people go back to look at my tutorials, they're still getting the whole tutorial. They just, you know, I tell everybody, you're getting a chatter in between too. It's my live uploaded, you know, on YouTube you can fast forward through things or back up or do whatever. Okay, so now that I have my cuff, and you all know I don't like my ends, so I'm going to work over top of it. For the first round I'm going to chain 1, and I'm actually going to work 2 single crochets, and I'm going to put my stitch marker here. Use a smaller stitch marker in my first one. Turn on that light anyway. 2 single crochets in each. There's got to be a better way. I mean, honestly, it does not look, sorry, this dark. I don't know why it looks this dark. Okay, so I put 2 single crochets in this row. I'm going to put 2 single crochets in this row, 2 single crochets in this row, 2 single crochets in this row. So at the top of every single row, if she can sell something more, power to her. Thank you, Cindy. I really appreciate that. I'm having fun making them, so you know, I'm just going to keep making them. So you can see how we've done our 25 rounds around. If we put 2 single crochets in the top of each row, we'll end up with our 50 stitches that we want to start with. You just have to make sure you're getting into each row, because it looks like you're going into 1 row, but this is actually 1 row and 2 rows, 3 rows and 4 rows. So you have to work around your ribbing and make sure you're getting into the side of each single row so that you end up with your 50 stitches. Sorry. My slurping. So I'm going to keep going around here, and I am going to work over my starting edge there, because and it doesn't matter where you go, wherever you can fit the stitch in the side of the row is perfectly acceptable. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, 14. I feel like I have to sneeze. Open the door and the screen's open. And like I said, like, it's constant grass cutting here. And while like all the like spring wildflowers are coming up in the grass and people are cutting grass, it just does this to me. Never used to. It gets better as the summer goes on, though. Like, I don't get as sneezy. So I'm just working. Thank you. Just my 2 single crochets in the top of each row. so that I can get to the point where I have my stitch count for my first row of cats. Well, the first row is going to be cat heads. And then the first full row of cats will be after that. I'm almost at the end, so I'm going to stop and I'm going to count just to make sure I can end on my 50. 5, 6, 7, 47, 48, and I will have 49, 50, and then I'm going to slip stitch into my first stitch. And because I'm slip stitching into my first stitch, I'm actually going to mark my last stitch, and I'm a stitch marker person, so I like to mark my last stitch so that I don't count my slip stitch and chain one, because I will have a tendency to count my slip stitch and chain one where I join it. So a lot of times if I'm working a pattern, I'll put a stitch marker in the last stitch, and then I'll join and chain one, and then when I work the first stitch, I will put a stitch marker in the first stitch as well. So we have our cuff. We have our cuff, and we have it. Now there are a couple different ways. If you don't like the way this is flared, you could actually, which I do, I want it a little bit kind of bigger and comfy looking. So I don't mind that the cuff is tighter and the cats are going to be twice the size right here. But if you want this a little bit less drastic, you could always do single crochet in one row, increase in the next row, single crochet in the top of one row, 2 single crochets in the top of the next row, single crochet in the top of the next row, 2 single crochets in the top of the next row. And then I do believe you would just do, I would have to do the math, but you could figure out how many more stitches you needed to make your total, to make this doubled, and then you would just do that many more increases on the second round. So I mean, you could do it that way, but this is much easier. So I'm starting with a chain of 50. You're starting with however many chains you have in multiples of 5. You worked your ribbing for half the amount of rows as the chains you want. Half the amount of rows is the chains you want. So that's our ribbing. And then we increased in every row of ribbing. So I wanted 50. I did 25 rows of ribbing, 2 stitches in each one of the tops, which gives me 50. Now I have a feeling that I need one more stitch in there to give me a seam. If it's multiples of 5, because that way I might have a starting point, but I don't know. So I haven't gotten that far in my brain yet. again, we're freehanding this project together. So now my cat stitch, and I'm going to attempt to work this in the round. My cat stitch starts with 2 single crochets, or I'm sorry, 2 double crochets. 1 double crochet, 1 double crochet. This is supposed to be a double crochet. This is supposed to be a double crochet. This is a shell and this is a shell. So it starts with 2 double crochets, and then I skip 2 double crochets. Is it just me? Hold on. Do I not have my light turned up that I can't see? Oh my God. Okay, that's twice as bright now. No wonder why I couldn't see anything. Okay. So it starts with 2 double crochets. And then we skip 2 double crochets. Oh, we skip 3 stitches there? Yeah. 1, 2, 3 chains were skipped. And then we did 2 doubles, a chain, and 2 doubles in the next stitch. And then we skipped 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, we did skip 4 on that one too. I'm going to start with my chain 3 is my double crochet. And I just want 1 double crochet, so I'm going to count that as my first stitch. So you can see that's where I joined, and I chained 3 to start as my double crochet. I don't want to do, if I turned this into a circle, I would then have 4 plain double crochets, the 2 on each end, as like a seam. And I don't want that many double crochets as a seam. I only want maybe 1. So where I started, I'm going to chain 3 and count that as my 1. And then I'm going to skip, what did I skip here? Whoops, that was upside down. I skipped, let me just make sure, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so I skipped 4 stitches, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I did 2 double crochets, a chain 1, and 2 more double crochets. Now my double crochet is yarn over, insert it into my stitch, yarn over, pull it through my stitch, yarn over, pull it through 2 loops, pull it through 2 loops, again US standard terms. So this gives me my double crochet that I'm going to use as my seam line and my first shell there. So this would be, I only put 1 double crochet, I skipped my amount of single crochets on my cuff, and then this right here is my 2 double crochets, chain 1 and 2 double crochets in the same space. And now again I'm going to skip 4 more single crochets and do the same thing, 2 doubles, chain, 2 doubles, skip 4, 2 doubles, chain 1, 2 doubles in the same space, and I'm going to work that way around, and it should work out that, so again I'm going to skip 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then in the 5th one I'm going to do my 2 doubles, my chain 1, and my 2 doubles, and and then I'm going to skip 4 more. 1, 2, 3, 4, and in the 5th one I'm going to work my 2 doubles, so I have another shell. I'm going to skip 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I'm going to work my 2 doubles, chain 1, and 2 more doubles in the same space. Skip my 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and in the 5th one work my 2 doubles, chain 1, and 2 more doubles. Skip 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and in the 5th one again my 2 doubles, one, 2, 3, 4, and in the 5th one do my 2 doubles, chain 1, my 2 doubles. Oh, Janie, good morning. Okay, so I'm almost around. 1, 2, 3, 4. My 2 doubles, my chain 1, and my 2 doubles. Just a couple more left to go before I finish that round there. 1, 2, 3, 4, and my 2 doubles, 2 doubles, 1, 2, 3, 4. So if I do 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, in my first stitch, I'm going to end up doing another oh, that's right. That is right. 1, 2, 3, 4, and in the last stitch, maybe 2, 3, 4. So this is where I say sometimes you need to, like, what did I do? I skipped 3 there. So maybe I'll just skip 3 here. I figured I would have 10. Let me count my shells. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So yeah, I would need 1 more shell. So instead of skipping my 4, I'm just going to skip 3, 1, 2, 3, and then I'll make my shell. Again, sometimes the poetic or artistic license needs to be used. All right, so that gives me my last shell, and then I'm just going to slip stitch to this, to the top of that, and I'm going to use that one single, that's my chain, I'm going to use that chain as my double crochet for the seam. So I have all of my I have my 10, so 5, 50 divided by 5 will give me 10. So I have my 10 shells, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then I have the one stitch, the one lonely, I hate to say single, the one lonely double crochet in the center there that's going to make our seam that's going to run up the side where we know where we're going to divide it. So to start the next round, because we're attempting to work this cat stitch in the round. So when I look at my cat stitch, I've got my one that's going to be this is going to be end up being my center here. We'll see how this works out. And then I have another set of shells right over top of that set of shells, and I can kind of pull these aside so I can see that I did not skip anything. So I just did a shell right into a shell, and I just worked a shell on top of each shell that I did. So I'm going to chain 3, and that's going to be my, my chain 3 in the center here is always going to be like my running seam. So after I've chained my 3, I'm going to do my shell in my shell, and that was your double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, again US standard terms. So I have 2 double crochets, chain 1, 2 double crochets in the top of that one, just like this first row was 2 rows of shells. This first row is going to be 2 rows of shells. So I'm just going to then yarn over, find my next shell. This was 1 shell, my next shell, and I'm going to do my 2 double crochets, chain 1, 2 double crochets. That gives me a shell over top of a shell. I'm going to go to the next shell, and I'm going to do the same thing, work my 2 double crochets, my chain 1 and my 2 double crochets. Next round where we switch colors will be the tell-all round for this project, but I think I've gone over it enough in my head that it should be right. So my shell and my shell, go to the next one. You should always have 10 shells. 10 shells, well, you should always have the same amount of shells that you started with. So mine started with 10, because 25 increased to 50 divided by 5 gives me 10 shells. So depending on what your math was for how big you started your, how big you needed your stitches to be, that's what you always want to end up with every single round. Did I just lose another needle in the graveyard? I really need to clean out the graveyard. So I'm just going to keep going around with this one, working my shell on top of every shell. So shell on top of my shell. Until I have the same number of shells all the way around, and my 1 double crochet for my seam. And I thought about, do I want a seam? Don't I want a seam? But I thought it would be an easier transition from round to round if I had a seam there. And even though it may seem complicated, I really truly am about, hey Billy Dawn, I am really about trying to make things a little bit simple for me when I try to do a project, even though, I don't know, it may look complicated, but again, I'm just doing the same movements. I'm just doing my yarn over and pull through a loop. And these are just all double crochets. These were all single crochets. Okay. So I made it to the end of this round. With my shell and my shell. And this is my seam stitch. So I'm going to, in the top of that chain 1, or in the top of that chain 3 that is my I'm counting as my double crochet. That's going to be my running seam. It's going to be a double crochet right up through the center. I'm just going to slip stitch into that, and going to finish off this color because we're going to work in the next color. And after we do the next round of color, I have my homework cut out for me, because then I have to work up the sleeves so that I can finish showing you guys how to work across the back. So this is my sleeve so far. That's my cuff, which is more than tight enough not to slip over my wrist, and this should be more than wide enough to fit over the fattest part of my arm. And so far what I have is shell on top of every shell. I have my ribbing stitches, my shell on top of every shell, and then I have, you can see where I have a shell on top of every shell, and then I have at the very center, I'm going to have just one running double crochet up the center as like a seam point. You like the cuff? Thank you. All right, so this is where it starts getting exciting. When you like see it all start to come together. You can see my crazy look. Actually, I don't think I look that crazy. I think it's more like because I have every window open. I have the yellow light on in front of me. I have, not the yellow light, but like the older light bulbs in front of me. I have the light that's hitting the ceiling, and it probably makes me look like a maniac. It's like when you hold a flashlight under your mirror. Flashlight under your chin. Alrighty, so now this is where we do our extended double crochet clusters, which sounds complicated, but you guys that did the cat stitch with me realize that it's not really. The worst part about this is going to be, for me, is going to have to be weaving in these ends, which makes me an insane person, but it is what it is. So I'm going to come back to my cuff. I'm going to, this is my starting point, is going to be those running double crochets up the seam. So from my right side, I am going to join my yarn with a slip stitch. And I'm going to leave my two tails, I'm just going to leave them hang. And I'm going to do my 1, 2, 3. And my 3 is going to be my running seam. So I have one here, and I'll have one here. The next stitch I need to do is going to be my the legs for my cats, or the paws that hang over. So I've got my one stitch here that's going to be my seam, and then I'm going to start the very next stitch with one of those. And one of those things are just simply, and I'm going to do that. So if you recall when we did the cat stitch, we have 2 rows my 3 little birds, my 2 little birds. I still don't have a third bird. This isn't going to be any better. Oh, maybe it will be. So this is why we did 2 rows. We're going to come all the way down here into this, by this first set of shells. Not the top row of shells, but the first row of shells that we did. So we're going to yarn over. This is our running seam right here, and these are our sets of shells, and we're going to come down here, not in this space, but in this space, and we're going to yarn over, come all the way down, pull our loop all the way up. See, we have 3 loops on there. We pulled this all the way up to where we want it, which is the top of this double crochet here. And then we're going to yarn over and go through 2 loops. And then we're going to go all the way back down. You can see where we skipped that first space from that top shell, and we came down to the space below it. We're going to, and we still have 2 loops on our hook. We're going to yarn over, come all the way down again, pull it up, go through the first 2 loops. Now we have 3 loops on our hook, and we're going to yarn over and we're going to come through those 3 loops. And now I'm going to look back at my cat pattern here. And according to my cat pattern, after I've done that, the next thing I do is a shell on top of the shell, and then I repeat what I did with that arm. So, one more bird, and every little thing is going to be all right. I keep telling her. It's my daughter's drawing board. All right, so we're going to come back here, and we're going to do our shell on top of our shell, which is our double crochet, chain 1, double crochet times 2, double crochet times 2, chain 1, double crochet times 2. Now it's way too bright. Feast or famine, right? And then we're going to do that extended double crochet cluster, extended, because we're going to go not in this, but down to the, not in this row round, but to this row around. So that gives us what we are going to call extended, and then we're going to do a cluster because we're going to do them 2 together actually. So we're going to wrap it around and we're going to pull it up to the height of that shell. You can see where we came all the way down, not in this round, but this round. And then we're going to yarn over and pull through those 2 stitches. And then we're going to do the same thing. We're going to yarn over, go back down in there, pull it up so they're even, yarn over and come through those 2 stitches, and then yarn over and finish the stitch. See our cat head pop out there? There's our cat head that's popping out. So now we're going to continue around. We're going to do a shell on the top of the shell, the extended stitch in between the next 2, shell in the shell, the extended stitch, shell in the shell, that extended stitch, shell in the shell, that extended stitch, and we're going to work all the way around to the very end. And then the last thing we're going to do is we're going to come down to, this is our seam, right? We're actually going to do another extended stitch right before our seam. So we'll do a shell in the shell, and then our last stitch is going to be our extended double crochet cluster. Extended only means because we're going down to the round below the round, right? So extended. And then a double crochet cluster just means that we're going to do 2 double crochets together. So that will be our, this right here will be our last stitch here, and then we just slip stitch to the top of our chain 3 that is our our seam. So I'm going to work around and do that. Am I working in the opposite direction? I sure am. I guess it doesn't really matter. I don't really feel like ripping it out, so this is how I'm going to do it. You wouldn't turn after your seams. Now the window's going to... You would not turn after your seams, but I joined it to the wrong side, so I'm just going to keep going with it because you can see that should be my right side, and the part that I'm working with should always be my right sides, and I just joined it backwards. But it's not really going to matter, and nobody's going to notice that but me or somebody that I pointed out to, so I'm just going to keep going. There are some mistakes that you really don't have to worry about, honestly. So, cluster in my cluster. I'm going to finish this round of cats and join the next round so you can see the actual cat pop out, and then I will call it a day so that we can finish our sleeve up to the point where we want it, which is just maybe an inch or so from our maybe 2 inches, 3 inches, something like that from our armpit, just so we have enough space to pull our scarf out once we put the sleeve on. So again, I'm at that extended cluster, and it's only extended because instead of going through that loop, we're going to extend it down to another round, pull it up. So that's the extension. It makes it a cluster because we did 2. Again, pull your loop up even through 2, through all 3, and then we do another shell in our shell, which is our 2 double crochets, chain 1, 2 double crochets. I have a feeling I'm going to really like this. But I promised myself I am not keeping any more pieces because I cannot possibly just keep keeping things, because for the amount of stuff that I make, I wouldn't even come close to having room. Now I can tell I'm starting to crochet really tight. Thank you for all the likes, guys. I appreciate it. All right. It's always exciting when you start to like freehand something and you realize it's working out the way you wanted it to. That's really exciting. And I guess part of that is doing a lot of thinking. That might sound really odd, but doing a lot of thinking through the process. And hey Trudy, good morning. And you're like trying to like visualize it in your brain. And then the second part of the process is making the counts count and not crocheting your gray hairs into the project. So again, I want to make sure I pull that cluster up to the same height as my working back towards my skein. Anybody else do that? Good morning, Nana Cindy. Another Cindy. I love all my Cindys. So back up. If you guys missed any part of this and you want to see it, this tutorial is going to be uploaded to YouTube. That is my channel. And that is the podcast / playlist where I upload all of my tutorials. And they are, you get pretty much what you see in the mornings. I don't edit them. I just upload them and put them on YouTube, and you guys can filter out what you want to filter out, or watch my ridiculous chatter all over again and work with me. It's sort of like a crochet along. So I'm at my last shell. So far in this tutorial, I've showed you how to measure to accommodate the size that you want and how to start things, and now we're getting to the sleeve part. So now did my last shell in my last set of shells, and this is my running, this is going to be my running seam here, which is just one double crochet. So now I'm going to come down here and I'm going to do my last paw. I mean, I guess I could have put 2 double crochets there for a running seam, but I didn't. I guess at this point I could start putting a chain 1 in between, but I don't really think I have to. I'm just looking. No, I don't think I have to put a chain 1 in between there. Maybe. Just so it looks like a space. I think maybe I will. It's your preference. That way it kind of divides up the last 2 hands. Or we could eliminate that seam all the way altogether, which at this point, if you wanted to do that, now would be the time to do that. So if you wanted to eliminate that seam altogether, now would be the time to do that. But I think you kind of need the seam to make it easier. And this is the underside of it anyway, so you could always make that seam 2, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to slip stitch right into it, and that's my running seam. You can see my cat heads pop. The next 2 rounds, so if I look at my stitch, so this is the one that we just did. We did our shells and our extended double crochets, and that made our cat head pop. So this was what we just did here. And now we have 2 more rounds that we're going to work that are just a shell inside of a shell. No chains, just a shell inside of a shell, shell inside of a shell, and then we're going to do our one double crochet, running double crochet there is our seam. So I'm going to do my chain 3 for my double crochet, and I'm going to come over and I'm going to do my shell and my shell, and I'm going to work all the way around like that. Thank you guys for all the likes. Yes, you need it for the paw. But if you eliminated this running chain here, you would then have a total circle where you would just have one paw, and it would just, but I kind of think we need the seam, so I'm not going to mind those paws close together like that. I'm going to leave it as it is, and if I decide to change it for the next one, I can. I have one to reference. Again, I'm not chaining, I'm just doing my shell and my shell, skipping over top of the paws, working back towards my yarn. Sorry. So here's my seam stitch is going to be here. I'm just doing a shell on top of a shell, shell on top of a shell. It's going to seem tight, but you want to remember, you don't want it to keep flaring out. You want it to go up. So That's one of the reasons why we're not putting that. I have to stop doing that. Because you want it to start going straight up as a sleeve. So this should pull a little bit tighter from shell to shell. It should look like it's pulling almost too tight, but it's not really. And don't forget, we're going to come down here and we're going to do our next set of paws. So it's all going to work out. Whoops. Yeah. See, that's one of those like things that I would look at it after the fact and say, well, maybe I want to change this. Or if I were writing the pattern, for this, I would probably make at least 5 of them before I was confident that I had the pattern written the way that I wanted it, which is one of the reasons why I don't really write patterns. But I'm going to go all the way around this. Thank you for all the likes. Not to mention, the more rows I do, the tighter I get. I need to like remember to relax my tension. You are putting the chain one in the middle of the shells. Your shell hasn't changed. Your shell is still a 2 double crochet, chain 1, 2 double crochet. You're just not chaining in between your shells. Okay, so I'm at the last one. I'm at the last one. So these were my shells, these were my shells, these were my shells, and I didn't put a shell here. See, I guess I could have put a shell there and just started with, maybe I'll do that and see what the next row looks like. So instead of doing my seam, I'll make it a little bit bigger, and where my seam is, I'm going to do like the second half of a shell, if that makes sense. So I'm going to do 2 double crochets and chain 1. Now I know I have this here as my seam is 1 double crochet, so I'm going to actually double crochet 1 more in there to make that shell, and then I'm going to slip stitch right up here to it. So that's going to give me like an 11th cat, if that makes sense. Good morning, Serena. So that's going to give me a second cat. It's kind of going to screw me up. And since that's kind of going to screw me up the way I did it, I know you guys probably think I'm crazy. I'm going to go backwards because this is where I want the middle of my seam to be. So I'm going to come backwards and I'm going to slip stitch to that. And then I'm going to chain my 3. And that's going to be my first one. I added another cat there where my running seams were. I added another cat head or a shell. We'll see if it makes sense. That's right. That's absolutely right. So now I'm going to definitely have to mark that this is the center, because I'll just la around and keep going around in circles. So I'm definitely going to mark that this is my center. That's my center. That's my center point. So I'm going to start with the second half of my shell, and then I'm going to go right to the next shell and do a shell over top, because see, we have the shells rows with the extended double crochets, and then we have 2 plain shell rows. So just a shell and a shell. No chains between them. Oops. There's a chain at the top of the shell though. So now I know, since I added a cat head, I should have 11 heads. And no, I have no idea how much yarn this is going to use, because, again, part of the process of just trying to freehand something, I just bought myself 2 skeins, and I'm going to work with them until they're gone, and then since I have to run back to Walmart anyway this week, I will probably just pick up 2 more just to be safe. Almost. Alright, so I made it all the way around with my shells and my shells, and this is where we added the shell, so it would kind of separate those paws a little bit, and we did the first half of it. So our chain 3 for the first double crochet, chain 3 for the first double crochet, and then our first double crochet, second double crochet. So I need to complete that shell, so I'm going to put 2 more double crochets in that shell, and then I'm going to chain 1, and I'm going to slip stitch into that first to make our last shell, and then I'm going to tie it off, because that's the end of that color. So now our starting point, since I kind of adapted that, what is a shrug? A shrug is basically a scarf what is a shrug? So it's basically a scarf with the sleeves tied up at the end. Yes, it's the arm thing. I don't know if Anna's still here. But yes, it was like the crocheted sleeves. All right, so now that we did that, this is our center point, and I'm going to go back to my gray and see if this all comes together and makes sense, because this should be the point where it comes together and makes sense, because so far we have our ribbing for our cuff, and we have our first set of heads. So let's see if it should be like a nice size sleeve, and it should still fit up here. So I'm going to come back to that, which was our middle. This is our running center of our round. We're working in rounds. This is our running center of our round. So I'm going to start with the second part of the shell. So from now on, I'm always starting with the second part of the shell. So 1, 2, 3 is the first double crochet, and then double crochet, and that gives me this part right here. So it gives me the second part, So when we end the round, we'll put the first 2 double crochets and a chain 1 to complete the shell over this shell. All right, so now we are back to our extended double crochet cluster. So not this one, but this one, we're going to yarn over, come down, not in this one, but below it. We're going to pull it up so it's about the same size, about the same height as our shells are going to be. Yarn over, pull through 1, yarn over and pull back through that loop, make sure it's the same height, pull through 2, then I'll pull through all 3, and then we're just going to shell in the top of our shell. So I just put my shell on top of my shell, and now I'm going to come down here, and not in this one, but in this one. So not this, below it, I'm going to do my extended double crochet cluster, which again is just my yarn over, extended because you're pulling it up through 2 rows. Just pull up through your stitch, pull through 2 loops, yarn over and do it a second time, which is what makes it a cluster. Pull through the first 2, and then pull through all 3 together. And then in the next one, we're going to just do our shell over top of our shell. And look at that. We have cats. We have cats. We have cats in a circle. And honestly, you could do the same sleeve if you wanted to just do the sleeves, right? And then start the front of a sweater this way. Even if you want to make it a crop top, or if you want to do it like sweater. So, yeah, sometimes it takes a little bit, and your brain's kind of thinking, is this really going to work out? Trust me, mine does too. Is this really going to work out? But then in the end, you're like, yes, I got it together. But you could just make the sleeves, and then you could start at the bottom the same way you did with the ribbing, where you would make to see how big you wanted it around your waist, and then do your ribbing, and then start your cats the same way and work up to make the front part of the sweater and the back part of the sweater, and then stitch them together. You could do that instead of a shrug. Because honestly, now we have the sleeves down pat. But again, that's the point of me sitting here and freehanding something with you guys that I've never done before, so you can kind of see that thought process, so that you know how to think for yourself when you're trying to put things together and do things a little bit differently for yourself, which is it gets to be really fun sometimes to know that, hey, I can do this. I just need to think about it just a little bit, and I can do this. Now, after this round, I am going to count to make sure I only have 11 cats. That just made me sound like a really crazy cat lady. I am crazy. But I'm more canine crazy. All right. So again, we're just doing our extended double over our extended double and our shell over our shell. Another extended double, not in this one, but in this one. Oh, I'm so excited. This is looking so cute. I definitely like it, I think, without the seam. So I think if I made it again, I would probably adjust it so that my 10th shell was like my 10th shell. Like I would, because I added an extra shell here as an afterthought. I added an extra shell as an afterthought, which is, I mean, fine. It's not, it's only going to make a little bit of a difference, and it's supposed to be like a fun sweater anyway. So, but I think I would try to, instead of doing that first double crochet as like a center seam, I would put 2 double crochets there as like, so I would do 2 double crochets at my starting point to do my first half, my first shell, right? And then I would work my shells around, and this would be shell number 10 would be at my starting point. I don't know if that made sense or not, but so let me at least get to the point where I am all the way around. And then I have some homework to do to finish this sleeve. But now I'm going to have to make the second sleeve the same way. So I'm going to have to start it. I mean, I guess I don't have to. I could probably pull this all out, but I'll have to see how I'm feeling about that later. I am down to my last leg. And after I've done my last leg, I'm going to do the second half of my shell for my head. And then I'm going to chain 1. Actually, since I'm still using the same, and I want to start my shell in the middle of my shell, just like I did with the granny squares. Instead of chaining 1 and slip stitching over here, you can actually just skip the chain 1 and come into that first stitch there and do a single crochet, which puts you at the top of the loop, chain 2, and then do your second second double crochet of the shell, of the second half of the shell, right into that space between. And that gives you the second part of that shell. So instead of chaining one and slip stitching to this one, you would just single crochet, chain two, and then double crochet in the same space there. All right. So now we are back to the point where we are just going to shell on top of the shells. So now we have cats. Cats in a round. And next we're going to have a row of gray cats. What do you guys think? I'm liking that. It's going to be one of those things my daughter claims. I'm liking that. But you can see the process. And if you didn't want to rip out where you had started to do seams, like this is our running seam, if you didn't want to rip that out, you would just have to make sure that you were looking at it. You love the cats? Thank you. Cindy's liking it too. Thank you. I'm really liking this too. Keep in mind, I haven't done this before either. Again, I'm just like sitting here playing with, just like I would when I sat here and if I tried to do it on my own. You're hearing all my thoughts and you're looking at my crazy process. But and this is one of them where I thought I would use that running, just double crochet up the middle there, and then instead I added an extra cat head. If I didn't want to tear this out to this point, I would just have to make sure after I did my stitches and I started with my gray that I did the same thing, if that makes sense, that I did the same thing to this point so that both sleeves looked the same. Yes? Does that make sense? I hope so. So yay, I'm really excited by that. I'm loving the cats too. And that's going to be the sleeve. And that's going to go all the way up. And then we're going to stop working in our rounds. And we're just going to start working in rows at that point to go halfway across the back. And then we're going to start all over again for the next sleeve. And we're going to work all the way up until we split it under our arms. And then we're going to start working our rows and come to the center in the back and join them. And I will go through all that. But for now I have my homework, and I do like those cats. Yay! So I managed to do the cats in a row in a circle. And I'm really liking that so far. That's going to be like super cute. I'm glad I did that. Okay. So now that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to keep alternating just like I did until I get to the end to about maybe 3 inches away from like under my arm there. And I'm going to keep alternating, and hopefully when I come back, I'm to the point with this sleeve tomorrow morning that I can split it and we can start making the scarf part across our back. That works for me. I hope you enjoyed that today. I hope it was easy to understand. I hope you were able to follow me. And I am very grateful to all of you guys that stayed. If you missed any part of it, I am going to upload this entire live, all of my chatter, all of my craziness, all of my everything, to my YouTube channel and that playlist / podcast, whatever they want to call it. So you guys can go back and watch what you missed. And that's what we've done so far, and we're working on a cat shrug. All right. Good live. Thank you, Janie. Cindy, have a great day. Thank you. I hope you guys all enjoy the rest of your day as well. Whether it's good, mediocre, or trying. I hope you guys at least enjoy it, or try to enjoy it. Again, for those of you guys just joining, if you want to see this tutorial that I just did for the past hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes, I don't know what I talked for, I lose track. You can find it on my YouTube channel, and later on this afternoon I'll probably have it. Depends on how long TikTok takes to process it, and my computer takes to download it and upload it. So by this evening, definitely this part of the tutorial will be there, and by tomorrow hopefully I have this sleeve done with my rows of cats. I can't wait to see it. Thank you guys. I'll see you later.